Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, Ambassador, Your Excellency. It's a great pleasure to be in your house. We always feel very welcome here. It's a beautiful setting, and we're very grateful to you, to your staff, to colleagues, to Miguel in particular, for organising the day and for having us all here, very well fed and very well watered, and no doubt very well stimulated this afternoon as well. So many, many thanks to you. Here we are, 111 years after Sorolla had his big exhibition in London. I think we all have to recognise that that exhibition was a big failure. He was not remotely happy here in London. You can read his correspondence with his wife, which is very revealing. He says things there that I'm sure he wouldn't say to anyone else. But right from the start, things didn't go very well. He didn't like London when he arrived. His first description of it is "Este es un babel." This is se masca carbón. You actually are eating coal as you breathe. He found it very difficult to paint in London. He thought London was much less elegant than Paris. He thought people were more badly dressed. He was astonished at how many young women there were around at all hours. He gives no further commentary. He thought that English workers were lazy. He thought the city was expensive. The exhibition organisers at the Grafton Galleries were grasping and duplicitous, and by the end of the show he was saying even worse things. However, he did have some positive things to say about his time here in London. He was very impressed with the underground. He called it El Tubo, and he said that it was very quick and very efficient. He, on several occasions, said to the ambassador, the British ambassador in London, was completely charming, which of course is an inherited trait. He was hosted in a hotel just off the Aldwych, just off the Strand, called the Hotel Previtali, which was run by an Italian family. And I'm sure that's one of the reasons why he doesn't complain too much about the food in London. And on one occasion he says that he ate cooked salmon, and cooked salmon was a great speciality in London, and he was absolutely thrilled by it. He loved the museums. He spent time at the Wallace, at the Victoria and Albert Museum, which he loved enormously. He walked past the National Gallery every day as he made his way to the Grafton Galleries. He was thrilled by the Rembrandts and the Velasquez's, both at the Wallace and at the National Gallery. He was not a big fan of the Tate, which had just been opened just a few years previously, and he says in a letter to his wife that it was hardly worth getting the boat to travel down the river to see the pictures at the Tate Gallery. He was treated very well by artists in London. He was very grateful to Hercoma, to Alma Tadema, in particular Sargent. He was very, very well treated. He was very well treated by the RAs. He was a guest at their annual dinner, and he was made to feel very welcome by his fellow artists. However, he felt that taste in London was not sufficiently advanced for his work to be properly appreciated. And he had to give some sort of explanation to himself as to why the works simply weren't selling. The show was enormous in the galleries. He had brought together about 450 pictures, so a much, much bigger show than the one that you can see today at the National Gallery. In fact, he left a good number of pictures out of the show because he wanted it to be even smarter. But he had to give himself some explanation as to why people weren't buying his pictures. Very few pictures were sold at that exhibition. And he talks about visiting London, visiting the dealers, seeing the kinds of works that were being sold to buyers in London. And he considered them to be rather timid. And he considered that his own work was very advanced, and consequently the population of London, or the buyers in London, weren't quite ready to appreciate his manner. One of the things he had hoped would emerge from his time in London was commissions for commissions for portraits. That was the way in which a successful society artist could become both famous and wealthy. So he had certainly hoped that commissions would follow. In fact, they didn't. But he did, of course, paint the portrait of Princess Beatrice, which is the one work by Sorolla which is today in a national museum in this country at the Portrait Gallery round the corner. And I have to say, I'm very grateful to my colleague Nicholas Cullinan, who agreed that just for the opening, just that evening, that the Queen of Spain, Her Majesty Queen Letizia, and Prince Charles were with us for the opening. That picture was brought over to the National Gallery just across the way, so that we could show it there. And as we brought Queen Letizia and Prince Charles into the last room where the picture was placed on an easel, both of them immediately recognised who it was. The Queen Letizia recognised that it was her husband's great-great-great-grandmother. I think that's 4 greats, I can't remember. And then Prince Charles said, of course, yes, my great-great-great-aunt. She gave me my first cigarette. That's what he remembered about me. I think you're not supposed to reveal our conversations with the royals, but we're in foreign territory here. So that's all right. I have to say, it was a risk to put on Sorolla in the Saintory. This is our big exhibition space. These are expensive exhibitions, as you can imagine. The National Gallery had considered doing an exhibition in the mid-90s devoted to Sorolla and Zuloaga. Nothing came of that. When I came to the gallery, I proposed that we think about doing something on Sorolla, possibly for the Sunday room, which is the smaller space up on the main floor. And my colleague, Chris Riepel, who's curated the show, together with our head of exhibitions, convinced me with great enthusiasm that that was the wrong thing to do, and that we should really put on a big show in the staging space itself. It was a risk. Sorolla's not an artist that people know. We do some audience analysis, and museums do it, and we found that practically nobody had ever heard of Sorolla. No one was quite sure how to pronounce his name. This was not an ideal start to a major Saintory exhibition. But as things have turned out, it's done fantastically well. It's been very well received by the press. It's been very well received by the public, and I can announce today, with still about 10 days to go, I think, that we have been visited, or the show's been visited, by 140,000 people, which is pretty astonishing, given if you think back to the Goya portrait show or the Caravaggio exhibition we did a few years ago. We were looking at figures of around 170, 180. So it's really very, very astonishing. A tribute to the artist and a tribute to the curators of the exhibition. Chris, in particular, is the lead curator. Also Akemi, who will be speaking a bit later on, and of course Blanca Pons Sorolla, who was very, very closely involved from the start. And I have to say, I think that royal visit, these things help enormously. That royal visit at the start, which we're very grateful to the embassy for essentially organising for us, really I think gave it a kind of social cachet to begin with, gave it a good start in the press, both in Spain and here, and we are very grateful for that. Very grateful to our own royal patron, Prince Charles, and of course to Queen Letizia and the royal household. I think people emerge from the exhibition smiling, joyful. Consuelo refers to the Sorolla effect, which the artist has on people. And let's be honest, these are not the happiest times in our country. And I do like to think that the Sorolla experience has helped people just kind of get through the rather kind of dark times that we're living here. No more of that. I really want to finish by introducing the first speaker of the day, who is Consuelo. And I want to do that really by thanking her. It's her belief in our project, it's her generosity as director of the Sorolla Museum that has made it happen. It simply couldn't have happened without her. So she's been a great champion of the artist, a great supporter and friend of the National Gallery. It's a great pleasure to have her here with us. So I'm delighted to welcome her up to the podium to kick off proceedings officially with your first talk. Thank you very much indeed.